Hi, Andrew from SACS. If you're watching this video, it's almost certainly because you're a user of something that SACS calls the Personal Style Inventory. The Personal Style Inventory is what we call a 5-factor personality assessment. Very effective one. We've used it for years, and it's typically embedded in things like our support worker assessment, foundation assessment it's sometimes called, or short psychological risk assessment. So this video is to ask you to consider moving from the Personal Style Inventory to a thing called the SACS, and we'll explain to you why as we go along. So if we look at the PSI, you see firstly there's this summary of all of the personality factors: emotionality, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness to experience. Now this is what we call the 5-factor model of personality. And the 5-factor model of personality is the belief that there are 5 key personality characteristics. Now within that, you'll see that there are measures of emotionality. Emotionality is kind of a grab bag of negatives from a resilience and also interpersonal adjustment point of view. Extroversion, 6 extroversion facets. That's what we call these little things that make up the big thing. Then there's agreeableness, and in this case, agreeableness is all about not being angry. Then there's conscientiousness, and there are 5 conscientiousness characteristics. And then there's openness to experience. And if you're a user of one of the instruments I mentioned earlier, you're going to be very familiar with these characteristics. We're suggesting that you move across to the SACS. And the reason for this is a number of things. Thing number one is that it's actually slightly, only one question, but it's shorter, and it measures more within that shorter format. Second, all of the questions are work worded. In other words, the questions don't ask about art galleries or anything like that. They ask about colleagues and they ask about work. And so this instrument was designed specifically to be a work-worded instrument. Thirdly, it has extremely high rates of what we call face validity because of this. Because all the questions are relevant to work, people feel comfortable to be assessed through using this tool. Fourthly, it's a more contemporary measurement model, which means that there are 6 factors rather than 5. But the 6th factor is a really important one because it's a thing called integrity modesty. Integrity modesty is a relatively new discovery in the world of personality, only in the last 15 years or so, but it can be shown to correlate with honesty behaviours and also the absence of negative behaviours such as bullying and harassment things. In fact, people who score well on this go to jail less often than people who score poorly on it. Then emotionality, once more, a slightly different version of emotionality, only 4 facets: threat, sensitivity, anxiety, lack of independence, and overly empathic. Extroversion, only 4 facets rather than the 6 that are involved in the PSI. And the extroversion scale of the SACS correlates very heavily with the extroversion scale of the Personal Style Inventory. Then there is absence of anger, and absence of anger correlates very heavily with the agreeableness score in the Personal Style Inventory. Again, 4 facets. Then there's conscientiousness, and instead of the conscientiousness scale of the Personal Style Inventory, which has 5 measures, this has only 4 measures, but again, very heavy correlations between the conscientiousness scale of the SACS and the Personal Style Inventory. Openness to experience, again, 4 facets. And we end up with this measure called soft-heartedness. Now, many of our clients that are involved in things like support work are actually looking for people who are kind of altruistic, and this is an additional measure. So in summary, the key differences are that you're measuring more things with less total number of questions. Less facets in each of the factors means that we can get through more material with the same number of questions virtually. In addition to that, the addition of the integrity modesty score I think is very important. And the fact that all the questions are work-worded does help from a credibility point of view. If you're completely committed to staying with the current tool, that's fine. We will continue to support that. But if you're happy to consider moving across to the SACS, we will set up free trials so that you get a chance to see how it works and see how it might relate to your business. All new users of SACS services are being introduced to personality assessment through the SACS. If you want to find out more, please don't hesitate to click on the link near this video or be in touch with your account manager to get whatever help you need.